Welcome to our program, Astronomy for Everyone. This year, 2009, is the International Year of Astronomy, and as part of the Ford Club's mission to bring astronomy to the people, we are talking about the telescope. And this part of our program will be about the history of the telescope. Now, this is going to be a short, quick history, and hopefully it will kindle your interest and make you want to check it out further for yourself. The first telescope that was invented was the refracting telescope. And here you can see a picture of one. You can see that the light enters through the opening, passes through a lens, focuses down to a point, bounces up off a mirror, and into the eyepiece. Now, this was the first type of telescope that was invented, and this invention was credited to a German-born Dutch lens maker by the name of Hans Lippershey, who was working in the early 1600s. Now, was Mr. Lippershey the first one to actually build a telescope? Well, we don't exactly know, but we do know that he was granted a patent for his device by the Dutch government in the fall of 1608. He put together a series of lenses and presented it to the leaders of the Netherlands to be used actually for military purposes. He didn't think of pointing it towards the sky. Now, the person who is actually most associated with the telescope in the minds of the public is the Italian scientist and mathematician Galileo. Now, Galileo didn't invent the telescope, but he was the first person who is credited with turning his telescope to the wonders of the night sky. Galileo observed Jupiter, where he discovered the 4 largest moons of that planet, which are named in his honor. They're known as the Galilean moons. His telescope was a refractor that he built himself from descriptions that he had read about, and you can see the image of that telescope right there. He built a number of telescopes that he used to study the heavens, and he was also the first to publish his findings. He did this in 1610 in a publication known as the Starry Messenger. Now, he also made drawings of what he observed. Among those drawings were Jupiter and its 4 moons, the phases of Venus, and the moon itself. And when he observed the moon and what he drew, showed the surface to not be smooth and perfect, but rather covered with rough craters, mountains, and valleys. Now, Galileo's discoveries that he published in his Starry Messenger pamphlet got him into trouble with church authorities in Rome. These discoveries of his added credibility to the theory of Nicholas Copernicus that said the sun, rather than the earth, was the center of the solar system. And of course, this ran contrary to church doctrine of the time. He was eventually dragged before the Inquisition, and rather than being burned at the stake, he was subjected to house arrest in his home for the rest of his life. Now, while Galileo is the most well-known, he certainly wasn't the only person using the telescope to study the heavens at this time. 2 of the other gentlemen who were involved with this, the first one was an English scientist and scholar whose name was Thomas Harriot. He worked at the same time as Galileo and did a lot of the same things that he did, but he did not publish his findings. The other gentleman was a Jesuit astronomer by the name of Christoph Scheiner, which you can see right here, who did his work in Germany and who was an adversary of Galileo. Now, with these early refracting telescopes, there were problems. The lenses were not of high quality, which caused the images to be blurred and also to cause a color fringing around the object that was being viewed. They didn't know how to correct this in the early days, but one way they found to alleviate the problem was by making the telescopes longer. And some of these telescopes got to ridiculous lengths, as you can see in the image here. This is a telescope that's 140 feet long. The extra length helped correct for some of these problems known as aberrations. One of the most vexing problems was chromatic aberration, causing color to fringe around the images. That's caused by the fact that the various components of white light that we see, the blues, the reds, the yellows, don't all come to focus at the same point. They're spread out. And while we've been able to correct that with modern technology, back in the early and mid-1600s, that was not available to them. Among the individuals using these long telescopes are Johannes Hevelius of Danzig and Christian Huygens of the Netherlands. Now, the gentleman who took care of the problems with the refracting telescopes and their aberrations is well known to many people. He's a famed English mathematician, philosopher, and scientist, and his name is Sir Isaac Newton. He approached the telescope from a different vantage point. Instead of using lenses, he tried using a mirror. He developed a method to grind a round shape in his mirror that would allow the light to be reflected back up to the eyepiece. Here in this image, you can see the actual telescope that Sir Isaac Newton built, his first reflector. Now, in this next image, you can see how light enters the Newtonian reflector. It comes in from the top, comes down, hits the curved mirror. The light path travels back up the tube, hits a mirror that's mounted at a 45-degree angle and angled out through the eyepiece. This telescope used a mirror made of metal and not of glass. The metal was called speculum, and it was an alloy that was able to be ground and polished to a high degree. And it was this type of mirror that was used in reflecting telescopes for the next 200 years. Now, one of the greatest astronomers and telescope makers of the 18th century was William Herschel. He was a German-born musician who emigrated to England to pursue his musical career, but soon became interested in astronomy. William worked with his younger sister Caroline for over 50 years, studying the heavens and making a number of discoveries. Also during this time, he built a number of telescopes, one in 20 feet length, that you can see here, and the other, his largest, at 40 feet, as you can see here. Using these telescopes, Herschel made one of his greatest discoveries. He found a new planet that he promptly named the Georgian Star in honor of his benefactor, King George III of England. Now, it's not surprising that this name was not popular back on the continent of Europe with the rest of the astronomical community, and they soon settled on the name Uranus, named for the Greek goddess of the heavens. Herschel studied the heavens well throughout the 19th century and left us many notes and interesting items that he discovered. Moving along into the 19th century, one of the great astronomers of his day was Lord Rosse, the third Earl of Rosse, William Parsons, who built a huge telescope at his estate in central Ireland. The telescope that you can see here was called the Leviathan of Parsonstown. And with this telescope, Lord Rosse was able to discover the spiral nature of galaxies, which they called nebula back in those days. This telescope was also made with a metal mirror made of speculum, and it was kept polished by a series of workmen to keep it at its high state. Now, glass mirrors finally came into existence through the work of a French scientist whose name was Leon Foucault. This was in the mid-1800s when they learned how to silver the back of a glass-shaped mirror. Through the 19th century, this telescope was used and fell into disrepair, but it has since been restored. Now, moving into the 20th century, there are a number of telescopes that you may be aware of. The first one is the Hooker telescope. We have the image right here. Next, we have the Lick telescope that you can see next, and the Hale telescope on Mount Palomar. Now, this last telescope is one that, it's my telescope, and it's your telescope. This is the Hubble Space Telescope, the newly refurbished Hubble Space Telescope, that has expanded our knowledge of the universe beyond our wildest imaginations. Now, as I said earlier, this has been an abridged history of the telescope. There's a lot more out there. I hope you enjoyed the presentation. If you have any questions, you can send that question to us. You can email us at our email address, astronomyforeveryone@gmail.com, and we'll be glad to get back to you with an answer. Stay tuned. After this short public service announcement, we'll be right back with the first light ceremony at the Lincoln Park Schools Observatory. Welcome back to our program. On a recent show, I spoke with several members of the renovation team that was working on refurbishing the Hector J Robinson Observatory on the grounds of Lincoln Park High School. Since that interview, the work has been completed with the installation of the new telescopes and related equipment. Recently, Astronomy For Everyone took their camera out to the observatory to record the dedication ceremony and Dr. Timothy Day's introduction of the equipment inside the observatory. Watch this.
Start. Before we, hey, attention everybody, thanks for coming out. I'm sure you guys don't mind getting out of class, and you're going to hopefully get a chance to view the sun. Hopefully these clouds will clear away, and you get a chance to see this really nice equipment that's in here that's going to be for you guys to use this year into the high school, and as long as you guys live around this area, you'll be welcome to come and use this telescope. My name is Mr. McMaster. I know I don't have every one of you guys as students, but this is something that's been a dream for about 10 years now. To the first day I borrowed the key from, I think it was maybe Mr. Tucker, when I was teaching at the high school, and looked inside and saw the bird's nest and this old telescope and said, I don't really know how I'm going to use this thing, but this looks really neat. So it's always been a dream. I still have kids in their 20s that are saying, hey, did you ever fix that thing? And now I could finally say yes. And there's been a lot of people involved that made this a reality. The most important being Dr. Timothy Day. Just a random email came across my computer, and he wanted to fix it up. He's a Lincoln Park resident, and he and the members of his astronomy club, they know what they're doing, because I have a lot to learn from them. So it was a really good marriage of minds, and they're going to be helping us out for years to come, keeping this telescope nice and in use. And we're glad you guys get to check it out. So in a little bit you get to look at it. We're going to do an official ribbon cutting ceremony. Some other notables. I don't know if you guys know, this is your Lincoln Park superintendent. This is Mr. Randall Kite. We've got Joseph Griggs and his crew were helpful in all the construction, and Mr. Carodi here is the most helpful one of the most helpful members from the Ford Amateur Astronomy Club. So now that I got your attention, I'll let Mr. Day say his piece. And
Mayor is here too now.
And Mayor Vaslav is here as well. I want to say thank you, and thank you to the city for their help with this as well.
Maybe we can get him in the... Come on up, man. Got my little carriage right there. Mayor on this side. Yeah, go on. Mayor on this side.
Come on over on this side. Thank you. When I was your age, I used to love astronomy, just like some kids love baseball or dinosaurs. I knew the names of all the astronauts when they were landing on the moon, and I could tell you all the details and facts, and I've never changed. My whole life, I've always been that excited about it. And I remember driving by this 10 years ago and saying, there must be some big telescope inside of there. It must be really cool. And we opened it up and saw that it needed some repairs and stuff, and so with Mr. McMaster, we got together and we raised some money and got a brand new telescope, and I want you guys to get to use it. Every great scientist who makes great discoveries, they start out your age and they get excited by looking up and seeing the stars and seeing things that are so cool. And that's where they begin. And so this is for you. This is for you to get excited about, for you to come and play with. You'll be able to see the pictures from this in the classrooms on the computers. You'll be able to come out at night for special observing sessions. Have fun with it.
If you're not excited about science, you have to be after listening to Dr. Day. I talked to him for about 10 minutes when we were reviewing this just a few minutes ago, and I'm thinking about coming back to school and studying science. We do, on the serious side, want to thank Dr. Day for his vision. We want to thank Mr. McMaster for writing the grant that got us $15,000 for a lot of the material. Ford Astronomy Club has been great with the work that they provided, along with Joe Griggs, who is a Lincoln Parker, who has many construction contacts that has made this new building, it's not a new building, that has reconstructed this building. My understanding is this telescope has no counterpart in the whole Detroit area, including Cranbrook Institute. So Lincoln Park students owe Dr. Day and all these people a sincere thanks. Let's give them. Also, let me introduce, we have 3 school board members here that have helped make this possible and allow this to be. We have Mr. Charles Higgins, Mr. Gordon Gilbert, and Mrs. Mary Corson. Thank you for being here.
Okay. Observatory in the International Year. I appreciate your friendship. Yes.
very good. Yeah, yeah.
Anyways, well, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure.
I don't know how you
Stuff.
It's my fault. I didn't know any. Hi, my name is Dr. Timothy Day, and I want to share with you the tremendous pleasure I feel at being able to give to the community of Lincoln Park the state-of-the-art telescope. It's a beautiful instrument with the ability to see nearly 10% across the entire universe. We have special mounts that are computerized that interface with the computers, and the computers interface with the internet, and so whatever the telescopes see can be seen by computers virtually anywhere in the world. We have the main telescope tube made by Celestron with a 14-inch mirror in it. And then on top of that is an $800 refractor, a very fine telescope made by Meade for looking at larger patches of the sky. And it also has a solar filter. And on top of that is a $1,500 special hydrogen alpha solar telescope that's made for just looking at the sun and seeing enormous sheets of plasma come off of the sides of the sun and out into space and then back along magnetic field lines and fall back to the surface. And to look at that is just a marvel. It's exciting. And I've been passionate about this along with the club members that helped to put this together since I was just a little kid. And so to be next to an instrument like this and to have had a role in bringing about with its existence along with the community members is just, I'm like a kid in a candy shop. It's just the most exciting thing in the world to think of all the hours and the excitement and the things that we'll be able to see and photograph and use it for. And more than just that, to then take that excitement and that knowledge and share it with as many people who as are interested in learning about that and get the same sort of excitement as we do, the club members. There's very little that's as exciting as seeing somebody look through a scope like this and seeing Saturn's rings for the first time. And they go, wow! And their faces light up and you know they're hooked. Or to see the clouds in Jupiter and the bands and see the moons that Galileo saw 400 years ago. And you see the shadows of the moon go across the surface of the planet. And you just know they're hooked. You know they're excited. I've had people look through telescopes like this in my driveway at the moon at Halloween, and they think it's a trick. They look and they see the craters and how clear it is, and they go and they look at the other side of the telescope, and they say, that's not a TV in there or something, is it? And you say, no, that's what you're really looking at. And we live in a society where we have so much light pollution that the kids have forgotten to look up because there's really nothing up there besides the moon and a couple of bright points. And now with this here in the community, we have an instrument that can show them the heavens are full of interesting things to look at. And that's the part that drives us all to take the time and the effort to collect the money, to put our hours in, and then to be willing to teach, is that wonder passed on to the next generation. And if we find even one child who then takes that seed of excitement and turns it into a career and goes on and discovers something profound, then all of it was worth it. Thank you so much.
We hope you've enjoyed this update on the renovation of the observatory at the Lincoln Park High School. And Astronomy for Everyone will continue to bring you news and information on this valuable resource in the downriver communities. If you have any questions or would like to check out what's happening in astronomy in Southeast Michigan, please go to our website, astronomyforeveryone.org. Stay tuned as we inform you of upcoming astronomy events here in Southeast Michigan. And right after that, we'll have What's Up in Tonight's Sky.
Hello and welcome to What's Up in the Night Sky for October. The moon in October, the phases of the moon in October fall on Sundays. It starts at the beginning of the month with a full moon on the 4th. Now the full moon is up all night long. The third quarter, the waning moon, is on the 11th. So as the month goes on, it rises earlier and earlier in the morning, that is later if you're starting from the night. And so the third quarter moon is a morning object. The new moon is on the 18th. It's near the sun. This is a good time to look for something else in the night sky. The first quarter is an evening object. In fact, you can see it before the sun sets. And the first quarter lies on the 25th of October. November starts with a full moon on the 2nd of November, and again it is up all night long. So let's look at the planets for October. In the south, Jupiter is the brightest planet by far. In fact, it is so bright that if you look around and you see something really bright, that's pretty much south. Jupiter is in Capricorn, and in small binoculars you can see 3 or 4 points which are the moons of Jupiter, the Galilean moons. A much harder, much more difficult object, also in Capricorn, is Neptune. The planet Neptune is a little up and a little to the left of Jupiter. You'll need a telescope to see it. Uranus is a little easier to see than Neptune. From a very dark sky site, you can see Uranus naked eye, but you'll need at least binoculars, if not a telescope, and a very good finder chart to find Uranus before you have any chance of seeing it naked eye. On the 16th of October at 7 a.m., we have a great lineup for you. In the east, just before sunset, Mercury is the lowest, and then Saturn is directly above it, and the waning crescent moon, it's a very thin crescent moon, is above that, and then a little higher is Venus, very bright Venus. And then quite a bit higher than Venus, we have Mars. So we have 4 planets and the moon all pretty much in a row right there on the morning of the 16th of October. We want to thank you for watching Astronomy for Everyone. So let's go outside and look up at the night sky.